Dear participants, it is my honor to introduce the Honorable Senator Stan Kutcher. Senator Kutcher has been a dedicated advocate for human rights, democracy, and the advancement of Canada's healthcare system for many years. His contribution to supporting the Ukrainian community is unremarkable. Recently, the Senator introduced Bill S-210, the Ukrainian Heritage Month Act, which seeks to officially recognize at the federal level the important role of the Ukrainians that they have played in the formation and development of Canada. However, his support for Ukraine, it goes far beyond than that. In the face of ongoing Russian aggression, Senator Kutcher consistently emphasized that Canada must remain in solidarity with Ukraine, providing military and economical assistance, strengthening democracy, supporting mental health, and preserving Ukrainian identity. Please welcome the Honorable Senator Stanley Kutcher.
Дуже дякую, Марина. Дякую за все. Я Святослав Кучер, я сенатор канадський, і я підтримую Україну. Я буду говорити трошки по-українськи, трошки по-англійськи, так як моя баба сказала, half на пів. I would like to start by thanking the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress for the kind invitation to participate in this year's meeting. The UCC should rightfully be proud of what it has accomplished. Over 85 years of history, and everyone in this audience should be proud of what UCC has accomplished and continues to accomplish as it charts its way forward. I would also like to acknowledge the incredible hard work of the many volunteers. They're everywhere, and they're amazing, and they're giving their time freely. And they're so right on the ball. And they're mostly unseen, and we can't forget them. And the organizing committee, it's an incredible amount of work to put such a conference together. So please join me and thank them. I'm proud to stand with you as a Ukrainian Canadian. Both my parents were born in Ukraine. Мій батько з Тернопіль. Тернопіль, добре. Let's hear it for Тернопіль. Що більше from Тернопіль? All right. А моя мама з маленька села. Дякую. Довгів. Ніхто не здобув. Near Lviv, close to Lviv. Моя мама, її двоюрідна сестра зробила ця вишиванка для мене. А я народився тут в Торонті, at the Salvation Army Hospital, which will tell you how much money my parents had. Almost nічого. And I lived my child and adolescent years in many different places across Canada, ranging from small towns in the Alberta Prairie to cities in southern Ontario. My grandparents, my baba Egidio Osipovich, lived here in Toronto, and they were the scions of the Baptist Church on Tecumseh Avenue. Як вони сказали, на Текамсе. When I visited them on weekends, I would sneak out of the church service to get treats from the back door of the future bakery. They were much better than the prayers in the church when I was 8, which at that time was located on Queen Street. Ви знаєте, на Квіні. My parents and grandparents were called DPs, which meant displaced persons. And you know, that was not a friendly designation. It was, I see some heads nodding of people who are older than I am. They went through this. It was a not very welcoming reception to Canada. My mother's brother, Alex, my uncle, who grew up to be a banker, reframed that negative view of our refugee family to a positive one. He named DPs not to be displaced persons, but delayed pioneers. Dobre, tak? I have two brothers, Victor and Walter. Both live in Ontario, and both are in healthcare. Victor is a periodontist, and Walter is a gastroenterologist. I work with brains, which tells you a little bit about my brothers. A classic Ukrainian refugee family. My Aunt Nora is 90 years old and still lives by herself in Etobicoke. Yeah. My cousin Lisa was a beloved teacher in the St. Catharines School Board. And my other cousin, my dvoridny brat Mark, played for the Toronto Maple Leafs for over a decade. Yeah. The Toronto Maple Leafs. Do you know that other Toronto team? Quite the collection of DPs. Much later, I came to Toronto, did my psychiatry residency, then became a professor in the Faculty of Medicine at Toronto. Worked at Sunnybrook Hospitals, built all the adolescent programs at Sunnybrook Hospital. And then went to Halifax, where I was professor and head of psychiatry, associate dean of international health, built all the international health programs, and the Sun Life Financial Chair, and was appointed to the Senate in 2018. So being here today is a bit of a homecoming, and it feels good to be here. Actually, one time, many years ago, way before the Senate, when I was doing my doctor stuff, I was in this conference center in this hotel. And I was registering at the desk. And the person registering me said, "Oh, Dr. Kutcher, I just registered a Dr. Kutcher." Well, that could be either one of my brothers, right? So I thought, oh, it'd be nice to see one of my brothers. So he pointed to the elevators, and they were, I think, in a different position then. Anyway, I ran to the elevator, jumped on the elevator, and there was a man standing there. He was a bit afraid because I jumped in. And I looked at him, and he looked vaguely familiar, but didn't look like my brother. So I said to him, "Excuse me, are you Dr. Kutcher?" He said, "No, you're Dr. Kutcher." When I asked, and there are other stories which I can only tell you over a beer. When I asked Lesha and Ihor what I should speak about, they suggested that what as a Ukrainian Canadian I could share with you is what led me to public service in the Senate and what I would ask our Ukrainian community to consider, what we should do together over the next years. I'll do that, but first, I'd like to share with you what the new, and I might add improved, Senate is, and how it works better for Canadian democracy, because I think that many Canadians don't have the opportunity to understand how the new Senate works. This is something that no matter how important it may be for this country, I'm sure most of you have not stayed up all night long thinking about. Some of you have known that since 2016, Senate appointments have not been made in a way that will ensure that a senator represents a political party. No appointments after 2016 have been made to represent a political party. That's important. It means that senators are independent of the House of Commons and are independent in their work. So everyone that has been appointed since 2016 is an independent senator, not beholden to a party, which means that no political party can tell anymore any senator how to vote, what they should say when asked for comments by the media, and what witnesses they must suggest for committee meetings. So the party leader can't tell us how to vote, and they can't tell us how to think. Why is this important for Canada and for Canadians, and why am I sharing it with you? First, when the Senate was conceived during Confederation, more time was spent during the discussions on Confederation on trying to figure out how the Senate should be structured than anything else in Confederation. I actually am a failed PhD in history. I'm a university dropout. I dropped out of history to go to medical school. And by the ruling of the Supreme Court of 2004, the Senate should not be a pale imitation of the House of Commons. It's a complementary democratic institution, and it must be independent of the House. But in order to fulfill that function properly, the Senate cannot be independent of the House if its members belong to the same political parties that are in the House. That just makes sense, right? Because then they're subject to the same pressure that the elected members in a political party are subject to. They have to follow party discipline. They have to say what the leader says, or they have to do something else. At no time in the history of this country has Senate independence from political party influence mattered more. At no time in the history of Canada has the role of the Senate as a body fully independent of the House mattered more. At no time in the history of Canada has the role of the Senate as a democratic institution independent of the House and of the executive branch mattered more. The reason for this is seen in our neighbors to the south. There, the executive branch, the president and his cronies, the House of Representatives, and the Senate have all been overtaken by the same political party, one that gets its marching orders from the president, and we are seeing how the checks and balances necessary in a democracy are being unraveled. I'm by profession a psychiatrist, and I know a thing or two about human behavior. But you don't need to be a psychiatrist to know that when power beckons, it's easy to confuse the interests of the party with the interests of the country. It may be easier to tell the people of the country things that are not true, because that's what your party wants them to hear, rather than what they need to hear. So I'm standing here before you as a new kind of senator, an independent senator. Yes, I have my values, and I will live by those values. But I'm not beholden to any party, and neither are my colleagues. Enough about political science. Now let me turn to my own story, as Ihor and Lesha has suggested, as it relates to the Senate itself. Actually, for most of my entire life, I never wanted to be a senator. And I can't say that I ever thought about the possibility I knew that Canada had the good fortune to have some amazing senators, John Kutcher, Raynell Andrechuk, Paul Yutzik, for example, just to name a few. Indeed, Paul Yutzik, we should be very, very proud of him. He introduced, yes, absolutely. And maybe his daughters are here today, and I know the Yutzik Foundation carries the name forward bravely. He introduced the concept of multiculturalism as a national policy, but I had no plans to join those ranks. Truthfully, I thought because the political party system was the same in the House and in the Senate, that the Senate actually was a pale imitation of the House. And those of you who know me well know I do not want to be told what to do or what to think. The news of changes to the appointments to the Senate did not really make much impact on me until I began to notice who was being appointed. People like Murray Sinclair, chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a good colleague of mine prior to his death. Radna Ahmedvar, some of you may know her, a big champion for immigration. And I noticed that the people who were being appointed had a history of disagreeing with the government. And I thought, whoa, that's pretty interesting. Why would a government want to appoint a whole bunch of senators who disagree with them? That caused me some interest in the Senate, but not all that much. And frankly, I was too busy to care. Then I started getting a few phone calls and lunch invitations from people whose work I admired. And they suggested, why don't you apply for the Senate? So I said, I'd think about it, but I actually was too busy. So I didn't apply because you had to apply. It was a big process. I looked at the application form. It was so long. I thought, gosh, I'm going to spend a whole day on this. I don't have the time. Then one week, I had two people chat with me about this. One, a previous Minister of Finance in Brian Mulroney's government. You can figure out who that was. Also our ambassador to the United States. And one, a previous minister in Chrétien's government. So I thought that was pretty good, nice balance. And both suggested I apply and sort of said I should. And so after discussing it with my wife, I applied. And then I heard nothing for a long time. To be truthful, I completely forgot about my application. Then I got some calls from CSIS. They asked the weirdest questions. Like, really? That's a question that CSIS wants to know? I got to talk to the director. And then I got some calls from the Prime Minister's office. And if I thought the calls from CSIS and the questions that CSIS asked were strange, these were really, really weird questions. And then nothing. And I forgot about it all over again. And then one day when I was teaching in Belize, the country Belize, the Prime Minister calls me and here I am. That's how it happened. One of the things that I recalled after that phone call with the Prime Minister was the note that my grade 4 teacher had written on my report card. I found it when I was cleaning out my mother's apartment after she died. It read in part, quote, "Because he can never sit still and because he is always disturbing his classmates and not getting his work done, Stanley will never amount to much," end quote. Well, her description of my behavior was correct, her prediction not so much. My teacher also did not understand how a Ukrainian mother works. Who here has had a Ukrainian mother? То ви знаєте, про що я говорю, так? My brothers and I used to call our mother Herr Field Marshal. God bless her soul, she's not here. And she never showed me the report. Then after the call with the Prime Minister, I told my family, including the grandchildren, I told them that I would be a senator in Ottawa. My oldest grandchild, Liam, he looked at me in a strange way and said, "An Ottawa senator?" Wait for it. "You can hardly skate." But my mother was very proud of me. She was still alive at the time. And on the day I was sworn into the Senate, my mother was there. And I had bought a new suit. Now, you don't have to know my mother for this. This was the first suit I had ever bought in my life. She had bought me a suit when I was a teen. Can you imagine a teenager wearing a suit? Oh, she had figured out I should wear. I never wore that suit. And she'd been nagging me to wear a suit, and I always wore a sports jacket and jeans. And I could hardly wait to show her I had a suit. She would be so proud that I was wearing a suit, and I got it on sale as well. So I walked in and asked my mother, "Look, I finally bought a suit. How do you like it?" She looked at me and said, "It doesn't fit you properly." In the Senate, I learned that I had the opportunity to nudge the ship of state. I learned that legislation is the highest form of civic engagement. I found out, sadly, that sometimes political expediency seemed more important than science when it came to policymaking. And I learned that party politics sometimes meant that politicians who would otherwise do a different thing had to do what they were told. I also learned that you can go much farther together than alone. I've been blessed with some amazing friendships. For example, my seatmates, the whole time we've been in the Senate, we've been seatmates. And friend, a previous ambassador, deputy minister in Canada, my friend, the previous president of the Canadian Labour Congress, another close friend, Order of Canada recipient, born in Rhodesia, became the primary care doctor in Twillingate, Newfoundland. Can you imagine? Senator Rebecca Patterson, who is here tomorrow, a Rear Admiral in the Canadian Navy, touring the battlefields of Afghanistan, and also Senator Dasko, who's coming here tonight, who I get a chance to work with Senator Patterson and Senator Dasko on all things Ukrainian in the Senate of Canada. These include more and better support for long-range weapons and other military necessities, the need to close the skies to Russian drones and missiles so we don't have those horrific attacks like on Kyiv last night, veterans support and rehabilitation, mental health, seizure of Russian frozen assets, and developing a unique pathway to Canadian citizenship for newcomers, and much more. I was absolutely gobsmacked and surprised to find out that President Zelensky gave me the Order of Merit of Ukraine in August of this year. Unfortunately, I was ill and could not go to receive it. I've been fortunate to make my mark on some important pieces of legislation and committees. One of the bills I created, introduced in the Senate, is the Ukrainian Heritage Month bill, which designates the month of September as Ukrainian Heritage Month. I'm happy to share with you that it has finally passed the Senate and gone to the House. Once passed in the House, it will ensure that our Ukrainian heritage, of which we are so proud, will be celebrated from coast to coast to coast every year. All we need now is for Member of Parliament Yvonne Baker to get it through the House quickly, with Member of Parliament Bazan pushing his party to support it. I have suggested to them they could do second reading and third reading on the same day, and to have it proclaimed into law before Christmas. This is a nonpartisan bill. All political parties should support it, and I thank Yvonne Baker for taking on the sponsorship. It's been a privilege to be a Ukrainian Canadian in the Senate of Canada. Every day that I step into the chamber, I can hardly believe that I am there. How could a kid born to parents who were refugees who came to this country after World War II, who lost everything they had, who started with nothing, who started their lives all over again to be in this place called the Senate of Canada. And every time that I stand up to vote, I get a chill in my spine, because when I stand up to vote, it means, here I stand. Yatut. And who is standing there? It's a little Ukrainian kid from a refugee family with a substantive learning disability who happens to be wearing an ill-fitting suit. And there he is. Like, this is an amazing country. It is vibrant. It is forward-looking. It is not perfect. And we have to work harder to make it better. But there are not many places in the world where that can happen. But Canada, our Canada, is one of those places. And that what brings me to the last part of my remarks. Where does our community go from here? What can we do further? How can we help Canada be a better place for all Canadians? What can we do to help our families, our brothers and our sisters in Ukraine, not only survive this genocidal war, but actually win it? And I agree with the historian Timothy Snyder that in order for an empire to stop being an empire, it has to be defeated. My favorite philosopher, who I admired when I was a preteen, was then the catcher for the New York Yankees baseball team. His name was Yogi Berra. He once said, predictions wouldn't be so hard if they weren't about the future. He's correct. And I can't predict the future, and I can't tell you what I think we should be doing in 5 years, 5 months, or 5 days from now, but I can suggest what we should be doing right now. We must work together to push our government and our allies harder to support Ukraine's victory as soon as possible by providing the weapons and other support it needs. That is number one. Number one. This war would have been over a long time ago. Many lives would have been saved if the Western countries had the courage to move quicker and stand taller, if the coalition of the willing was actually the coalition of the doing. All the while preparing to help Ukraine in its reconstruction. Pushing our government to support better business-to-business capacity building and Canadian investment in Ukraine as the modernized CUFTA provides and as the Canadian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce promotes. We should be supporting those Ukrainian newcomers who have set down roots here in Canada over the last years to obtain a separate and rapid pathway to citizenship through obtaining their PR status. People such as Denya Zubri, who is my advisor on Ukraine, and so many of you in this room who are here now. I hear you. We hear you, UCC knows about you, and we're not going to stop pushing for you. I also encourage Ukrainians, especially our younger people, there are young Ukrainian people here, to run for political office, and for those older Ukrainians who have a solid record of accomplishment in your career, to apply for the Senate. I'll be gone in about a year. There's going to be a vacancy. For many decades, our diaspora has been active in many different athletic, professional, and business roles. We've also put forward a number of excellent MPs, MLAs, members of municipal councils, and yes, even senators. It's crucial to bring our values, our voices, the values of hard work, our commitment to excellence, and our investment in keeping this country at the top of all the lists that rank countries globally as the best in the world to live. Do you know that Canada consistently ranks in the top 5 of the best countries in the world to live in? My friends, it is the actions of Ukrainian Canadians who helped put us on the top of all those lists, and it will be the actions of Ukrainian Canadians that will keep us there. I cannot predict the future, but there is one thing that I can predict. We, as proud Ukrainian Canadians, can go much further in whatever we choose to do if we walk together than if we walk alone. Thank you. Дякую. Слава Україні!